because of the UPI system that has been built in India, a unified payments interface.
Alright, so let's start with this news article, right? So basically, Google, one of the largest tech companies in the world, went to the US Fed, which is like, the RBI in the US, and told them that, hey, you should build something like the UPI and maybe even call it Fed now. Right? So, everyone will be wondering, oh my god, isn't US one of the most developed countries in the world, and all that, why is Google suggesting that you build something like UPI? So in reality, in the US, let's say if you have a card, you can have instant transactions, but for you to send money between bank accounts, it still takes about a day or two, and it's a very lengthy process and cumbersome process in and of itself. And even companies like Google and Apple have tried to simplify that, and they have failed at that attempt at most of the parts. So does this mean when Google, one of the world's largest technology companies, going in and saying this, does that mean that India has the world's best payment system? So let's find out in this video. We've seen this a lot before in lower income countries and developing countries, right? You end up having a lot of leapfrogging of technology. So in countries like India and China, so there was this lack of access to computer systems, right? You didn't have laptops or desktops the way you had access to them in Western countries. So people did not have access to internet and computers till you had mobile phones, right? So in India, a large section of the population had access to computing and internet for the first time through a mobile phone. And because of that, these economies also ended up being mobile first economies, right? Most of your applications, most of your internet economy is around mobile phones, or most of your services are today rendered through your mobile phones and all. So because of that, you see that sort of things in a lot of things. Let's say compute is one, that people started accessing internet rather than through a desktop or through a mobile phone. Similar to that, payments also took that kind of leapfrogging, right? So in India, if you look at it, card penetration, let's say credit card usage, debit card usage, ATM usage, all of these things are similarly low, right, compared to Western countries and all of that. So in a lot of ways, if you look at it, Western countries are also people who went ahead and pioneered all of these methods. You start with the Bank of America card that went ahead and became Visa, and then the entire digital payments network is around all of that, right? So they started this, but then in a lot of ways that's something that also started India's digital payments revolution, right? So back in 2008, Visa and Mastercard had extremely stringent rules to issue cards to Indian banks, so which made it extremely hard for beyond those big players to issue cards to customers. And even when you issue them, you have extremely high charges, and it's impossible to sort of use cards. So in 2011 or something, RBI came ahead and said that there were 6 transactions in a year that were happening in a method that's not cash per individual every year, which is very, very low, right? That's 0.5 every month. So because of all of this, India decided to go ahead and build its own card network. We're not able to go and convince Visa and Mastercard that you should issue it to everyone. So we started working on something called as India Pay, which is similar to China Pay, and then we renamed it to RuPay and all of that. And then RuPay was born as a card service in 2012. So and then it went ahead and revolutionized card payments, right? Because it was almost easy for any RBI recognized bank to issue cards. There were instant issuing and very, very low charges and all of those things. So RuPay took up, and then even after point Visa went and complained to the US government that government of India promoting RuPay is hurting their business and all of those things. So we were able to sort of solve that and create a card network that was able to provide access to everyone and all that. But then this was also around the same time, 2008 is when NPCI is set up. Around the same time, 2 ex-Amazon employees are roaming around Coromandel starting a revolution of their own, right? And if you look at Flipkart's largest innovation that they did in India was that they pioneered something called cash on delivery, whereby you pay when the product is delivered to you. So this was epitome of showing how much card penetration, or let's say trust in financial payments digitally was in India at that point, right? So literally it was an innovation that they did, that you can pay when you deliver, then pay digitally, how Amazon and all of those players were doing it internationally at that point. Right? So that was how bad payments were. So at that like sort of point in 2012, you release cards, and then you have sort of like better ecosystem that is developing. At the same time, so that same revolution that sort of started in 2008 in Kormangala was now spreading like wildfire, and now there's this company in Noida called Paytm that is going around putting QR codes everywhere, and you can just simply pay using a QR code, right? So everyone's like, oh, this is really great. This looks like the future. That was already becoming the future in China. So there was like companies like Alipay and RuPay and all of these people like RuPay was integrated into WeChat and all of that. So that was also the same thing, like QR based payments and all of that. So that fundamentally was seen as a future, and like at the same time that you have Geo and all of these players as well coming into the scene. And in general, people were becoming more and more accepting of looking at digital products, digital internet access, and like mobile access, and like Android was getting better every day and all that. So at that point, like the government of India went ahead and decided that you need to create a system whereby you are able to sort of send money easily, right? And because the fundamental problem that still remained was that you needed a card to add money to Paytm, and like the card then had like your OTP verification systems and like all the other scams and everything that could happen. So like people were still not very 100% happy about their digital payment access. So the government was like, there needs to be an easier way to do it, and so they start sort of working on UPI network, which is like a framework. There is an agreement with multiple banks and all of those things, and they launch UPI in 2016. Right. So in 2016, in November 8, parallel to that, Narendra Modi goes and bans Indian currencies for 500 and 1,000 rupees. Right? So which is known as demonetization, and which fundamentally triggers like a need for digital payments. Right? Like you have no other choice but to pay digitally, which puts a lot of people in like a lot of distress over that time. But like even like there's a CNBC video that goes ahead and mocks at this situation satirically by saying that how do you build a digital economy? Give them no choice, right? Like regardless of like the no choice or the pandemic and all of those things, you see through the shot like UPI bolstered India to become a digital first economy, right? And that is extremely important as we move ahead, because like a digital economy has its own benefits, has lower cost to run, and like there's lower corruption, black money, and all of these things as well in the longer term picture. But fundamentally what is there is that India has been able to build a system whereby you have been able to drive user adoption in a way that it did not exist before. Like Indian people were skeptical of using digital payments, and if India has now become the world leader in digital payments, it means that you have been able to create something that was able to change user behavior, right, or customer behavior in all points, which is something that's like really, really good, and something that like everyone appreciates in like a Silicon Valley or startup concept at all points. So look at like what are like the three sort of things, right, that helped India build this sort of network, right? So I think the first fundamental thing is that it was at free of cost, right? So one of the largest problems for merchant adoption or retailer adoption for cards was the MDR rates, right, or merchant discount rates. So like every time you do a transaction on a card machine, you have to pay the SIM card provider, you have to pay the bank, you have to pay the bank that's issuing the card machine, etc., which is like used to come to like about 2 to like 3% at any given point in time. So which was a hassle for like anybody to expect payments, right? So what the government did, right? So I think the government also sort of started looking at it this way, right? Let's say we're spending a lot of money on defense, and that's to protect like our borders and all that. So like we should spend money on like digital payments or like infrastructure that enables digital payments, so that like we are able to probably reduce like black money, corruption, etc. What demonetization wanted to initially do and all of those things. So this was free, and like anybody could use it without a charge, both the merchant end and the customer end, which like enabled it to be used today even by like beggars, right? Beggars accept UPI, and then that's like great scale to like a digital transaction. So I think free of cost is the first reason that UPI was able to succeed immaculately. The second reason is that the focus on customer experience, right? So till that point, let's say if you look at any sort of like government build access products, or let's say the financial products built by the RBI, like net banking suites of any banks, very complicated, multiple authentication systems, like like not easy for a common man to understand, right? And like you set a pin once, you forget it, it's like a week-long process, and etc., etc. Here it's very simple. It's mobile first. You have registered on one like mobile first, or like one account ever in your life once. It's like a one-time registration, and like you can use it across the board, right? So I think that customer experience and ensuring that it's easy for everyone to understand is something that UPI was able to make, right? And I think the third and the most important factor is that it was open source and interoperable. Right? What that means is that, let's say Paytm is not open source. It's like Paytm owns the entire code that Paytm has and how the systems operate and all of those things. Right? So tomorrow I can't go to Paytm and be like, I want to build an app that uses Paytm's payment transfer infrastructure, and I would like to name it my own and build it my own, but Paytm would not allow, right? Whereas UPI is fundamentally a framework that's for anyone to use. The government has built it and anybody can adopt it and use that same system. So that's what an open source network means. And interoperability means that you're able to operate between apps, right? For example, a Paytm wallet cannot send money to, let's say, a MobiKwik wallet today, right? Even today that's not possible. So that's because these are independent ecosystems. It's the same problem from an iPhone, you can't airdrop to something that's an Android or something like that, right? The same sort of problem. So interoperability makes it easy for you to send things. Let's say Bluetooth normally supposed to do that. On an iPhone it still doesn't do that. But let's say that sort of lets you transfer things between everything, right? So that is interoperability, and that is one of the largest reasons that UPI is really successful, right? So I think in conclusion, we've been able to build the world's top digital payments infrastructure by all means, right? And now the government is trying to build the same sort of thing with e-commerce and build maybe an Amazon Flipkart, right? And now let's see how that pans out. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. We try to make informative videos like this on this channel. Do like the video if you enjoyed it. Do subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button so that you're notified anytime we release a new video. Do check out our other videos and leave your comments as your opinions. See you in the next one. Thank you.